In the number 10 spot, we got the Fantastic Four. We kick off our list with Marvel's first family. The Fantastic Four were initially created after Marvel noted how well the Justice League was doing for DC. The family debuted in 1961 and was actually very different from the Justice League. As opposed to heroes with the powers of the gods, they were flawed. They were relatable, and most importantly, they were a real family, not just a team of heroes coming together under dire circumstances. Now, the movies may have been less than fantastic, and the team has since suffered, but that does not take away from what they accomplished in their early years. Coming in at number 9 is the X-Men. One of the most recognizable Marvel teams out there, the X-Men debuted in 1963. What makes these guys so interesting is that they are activists, not just saviors. They fight for equality among humans and mutants, whereas their enemies want superiority for mutants. It is also enjoyable to see all the young mutants struggle with the discovery of their powers, and how leader Charles Xavier takes them in and attempts to temper them. The X-Men taught us that being different is okay, unless you want to destroy the world with it. Next at number 8, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Straying from our normal little world of DC and Marvel, 4 turtles named after Italian artists deserve their place on this list. Mirage Studios debuted the Turtles in 1984, and the Turtles were meant to be a parody on Marvel's Daredevil and New Mutants, as well as Frank Miller's Ronin and Dave Sim's Cerebus. What started out as a single issue, funded through loans and tax refunds, soon became a universally recognized franchise and a whole new way to celebrate pizza.
Yes, friends, the new Turbo Ginsu! Woohoo! It dices, it slices, and yet makes French fries in 3 different... Whoops!
As if we needed another way. In the number 7 spot is Birds of Prey. In a media so dominated by men, it is refreshing to have an all-female superhero team, and one that doesn't suck. The team debuted in 1995 as a collaboration between Oracle and Black Canary, and has since expanded to showcase some of DC's most underrated superheroines, such as Huntress and Vixen, while also inviting some bigger names like Catwoman. And just like the X-Men, the Birds of Prey also placed a hero with a disability front and center, a huge step for comic books. Coming in at number 6 is Power Rangers. This team of heroes absolutely killed it when they debuted in 1993, despite initially receiving criticism that the show was too violent for its younger target audience. Yeah, younger target audience. What started off as a single show with footage from its Japanese source material Super Sentai soon morphed into an elaborate franchise of shows, toys, comics, video games, the list goes on. There's probably not a kid alive who didn't own at least one thing Power Ranger themed.
Go, Power Rangers!
Next up at number 5, we have Watchmen. We don't cover these guys nearly as much as we should on this channel, but all it took was one series and one movie to leave a permanent impression on audiences, and that's how they made it onto this list. The Watchmen were introduced in 1986 and faced a war-threatened America with government-sanctioned costume superheroes, yet the team was composed of heroes who seemed anything but super. People who enforced peace through violent measures and were flawed and complex. Except Dr. Manhattan. Guy could probably out-OP Superman. Up next at number 4, we got Guardians of the Galaxy. What started off as a completely different team in 1969 that not many people knew about catapulted to success with the introduction of the team as we know it in 2014's movie. The team is easily one of the most diverse out there, seeing as some members consist of talking trash pandas.
I'm sorry, I took it too far. I meant trash panda. Is that better?
An adorable one-worded trees.
I am Groot.
And also Chris Pratt, who is recently single. In the number 3 spot is the Avengers. Moving into the biggest names in superhero team history here, the Avengers may not be our number 1 on this list, but they are perhaps the most impactful of all Marvel superhero teams. They first debuted in 1963 as a renovation to the All-Winner Squad, and have undergone many roster changes, spin-offs, and alternate versions. All the while, they've remained totally recognizable, and containing some of the biggest names of Marvel under one header. Plus, they have the Hulk. Need I go on? Coming in at number 2, we have the Justice League. The reason the Justice League edges out over the Avengers is simply because they were the original superhero team in 1940, under the name of the Justice Society of America. There was no superhero team more iconic than these guys, composed of the most universally recognizable names such as Batman and Superman. It almost seems unfair to throw all these powerful characters together. They've had to face off against some of the most terrifying villains such as Darkseid and the Joker, and even though they have been around for so long, their ongoing history makes them even more cherished among fans old old and young. So who possibly can top them? Get ready. And finally, in the number 1 spot is the Teen Titans. In keeping with modern times, there is no superhero team as widely celebrated at the moment than the Teen Titans. If you don't agree with me on this one, just check out some of our Teen Titan focused videos and see for yourself how much of a huge following they have. The Teen Titans were introduced in 1964 as a team of young superheroes who frequently played second string to their heroes. They are young, relatively inexperienced at dealing with villains, and have to deal with the struggles of adolescence as well as learning to be superheroes. The animated Teen Titans was especially fundamental to establishing the team's following, and now there's no other team with as loyal fans.
Number 10. The Reaching Hand. The amount of bizarre deaths Jimmy Olsen has to suffer in alternate realities, my goodness. In this story, featured in the Elseworlds 80-page giant from 1999, we see Bruce Wayne acting as a Lovecraftian detective, aiming to unravel the mystery that is the alleged murder of a elongated man. In reality, something far more dark and sinister has taken hold of the hero and is using him as its vessel to spread darkness throughout the city and take hold of other innocent souls. It reminds me a bit of the bizarre and campy 90s film Cast a Deadly Spell. Like most Lovecraft-inspired horror stories, this one ends with a foreboding cliffhanger. That face. I love that face. Bruce Wayne's face at the end, he's like, what will happen? You're dead. You're gonna die. It's not gonna be good. Number 9. Teen Titans The Lost Annual. This strange story has a campy 60s feel to it. It was originally slated to be released in the early 2000s as an Elseworlds special for Teen Titans, but was later delayed. In the end, it was released in 2008, where it would be referred to in the title as a Lost Annual. But originally, it was intended to be an Elseworlds special, so I'm gonna count it. Here, the Teen Titans team up to try and save President John F. Kennedy, who has been kidnapped by space aliens and replaced by some kind of double. The whole adventure is pretty wacky, which honestly is what makes it so enjoyable. You know me, I love wacky adventures. Reminds me a bit of an original series Star Trek episode. And in case you haven't gathered by now, TOS is my favorite of the Star Treks, so yes. Although I am finally watching Discovery now, so I guess we'll see what happens. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, a quick thank you to all of you for joining me this list, and a reminder to click that like if you want more videos like this one. I personally love exploring Elseworlds with you, so I'd love to do more about it. Number 8. Elseworlds' Finest, Supergirl and Batgirl. This one is kinda ridiculous, but also has some pretty powerful and epic moments. In this Elseworlds story, both Superman and Batman do not exist. Kal-El was destroyed before he could become Superman, though Kara Zor-El still made it to Earth. She took his place as Metropolis's hero, becoming Supergirl. Bruce Wayne never became Batman either, and instead Barbara Gordon guards Gotham as Batgirl, after her parents were murdered by accident instead of the Waynes, who were meant to be targeted. The two women join forces and take on a very sneaky Lex Luthor, who Supergirl had thought of as a close friend and ally initially, and a very jacked Joker. He's like really jacked, like more jacked than you could probably imagine. He's also wearing like a little gym outfit, which is just something. Number 7. A Nation Divided. This Elseworld comic, Superman: A Nation Divided, gives us a look at what Superman would be like if he was around during the Civil War and happened to be a Union soldier. In this story, Superman is known as Atticus Kent and ends up finding out he has superpowers during the Civil War. He quickly becomes the Union's new secret weapon and even takes both Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln on a little flight to give them a tour of the Capitol. I personally love when history and comics meld, and Elseworld stories that posit what if superheroes were real and part of historical events. So for me, this was an interesting story and one that I enjoyed. The whole story is told through letters of various historical figures as well as Kent himself. Number 6. Thrill Killer. Set in the 60s, this Elseworld stories follows a doomed Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, aka Richard Grey Stark, which is his actual name here, although he still goes by Dick Grayson because comics. These two attempt to take on the Joker, who in this world is a woman known as Bianca Steeplechase. In the end, Robin is killed, but so seemingly is the Joker. Oddly enough, in this reality, it's actually Batwoman and Robin who end up inspiring Bruce Wayne to join them. He becomes Batman after Dick's demise. Barbara is also the one with the wealth in this Elseworld story. She is an heiress who became somewhat estranged from her father after the unsolvable murder of her mother. Barbara uses her wealth to purchase Wayne Manor, as in this reality, the Waynes actually lost their fortune during the Great Depression. Very period of them. Very period to lose all of your money during the Great Depression. Or now, during the Now Depression. Moving on to number 5, the Batman and Dracula trilogy. Here we have a trilogy in which Batman crosses paths with Count Dracula. Told over the course of 3 graphic novels, Red Rain, Bloodstorm, and Crimson Mist, it was released between 1991 and 1998. Batman finds Dracula and his minions feeding on the homeless in Gotham. He ends up getting himself bitten in order to defeat Dracula in an attempt to match his strength. He impales the iconic character with a tree, but that's when his troubles really start. He develops a bloodlust and starts to go around brutally murdering his rogues gallery, including the Joker. Alfred and Commissioner Gordon are forced to stake him, but the stake is eventually removed by Alfred during a crime wave in Gotham, with Two-Face and Killer Croc being the only surviving villains, teaming up to try to get Batman once and for all. Number 4, Earth 3. Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate, an alternate reality where instead of the Justice League members being heroes, they're villains, and instead of the Justice League, we have the Crime Syndicate. In the place of Wonder Woman on the team, we have Superwoman, an evil version of Lois Lane armed with her lasso of submission. Although I always like to think of it as a whip of submission, but that's something else. You guys can cut that. That might be too kinky. I don't know. I don't know if it's too kinky. You tell me. Internet, you tell me. The heroes of this alternate Earth favor strength above all, and as such only seek to dominate and rule those who they consider to be weaker than them. The Crime Syndicate themselves are composed of members Deathstorm, Owlman, Superwoman, and Ultraman currently, but evil versions of Aquaman, known on this alternate Earth as Sea King, and The Flash, known here as Johnny Quick, were also part of the team at a time. I miss Johnny Quick. R.I.P. Johnny Quick. You dead. Number 3, Elseworlds' Finest. I mostly love this story for the art, to be honest. Elseworlds' Finest is quite different from the previous story we had with no Superman or Batman, with Supergirl and Batgirl respectively taking their place. This title of this story and 2-part limited series was initially based on the old comic series World's Finest, which featured the 2 heroes of Superman and Batman teaming up on the regular. Basically, it's their long-lasting BFF comic. In Elseworlds' Finest, we see the heroes team up to go on an Indiana Jones style adventure, with Bruce rocking some pretty sweet supernatural and mystical armor. The 2 must work together to face an evil Russian Lex and defeat the villainous Ra's al Ghul in order to save the world and free Lana Lang's father. Number 2, Red Sun. One of the most intriguing Elseworlds when it comes to Superman, and in my opinion Lex Luthor for any Lex fans out there, is Red Sun. Red Sun comes to us from the Elseworlds imprint and aims to answer the question, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? The result is we get a passionate communist Superman who, instead of standing for truth, justice, and the American way, stands for socialism, Stalin, and acts as a champion of the common worker. Instead of an S on his chest, he wears the symbol of communism, the hammer and sickle. Red Sun was a story written by Mark Miller, which offered us a different look at Lex Luthor as well, who became the president and sort of the hero of the USA, all as a part of his greater plan to satiate his obsession with destroying Superman. So in a weird way, Lex becomes sort of part hero as well as the recognizable part paranoid villain that we've all come to know and love. Number 1, Earth 1. Also known as Earth 1 with the number instead of the letters, so Earth 1 or Earth 1. But it's also confusing because there's multiple Earth 1s. When it comes to some of the DC Multiverse, it can actually just get a little confusing in general, as of course there are various Earths that have the same number depending on the continuity we're talking about, New Earth or Prime Earth, not to be confused as well with Earth Prime. Yeah, it can get pretty mathy up in your brain if you're trying to keep track of everything and separate it. But this time around, when I'm talking about alternate Earths when it comes to the number 1, I'm talking about Earth 1, where all of our heroes are just starting out as seen in the Earth 1 series, like Batman Earth 1, Superman Earth 1, Wonder Woman Earth 1. You get the idea. There's a lot of Earth 1s. I like how I didn't talk about it was interesting at all, I just talked about how it was confusing. Anyways, if you've read Earth 1 or any of those series, you know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. Enough said, apparently.
Number 10, Gorgon. If you remember the weirdest DC Multiverse superheroes video, which you should check out, I talked about a pastiche of the Incredible Hulk in DC Comics called Big Baby from Earth 8. He was part of a team called the Retaliators, who were supposed to be a joke version of the Avengers. This universe also had a team of villains called the Extremists. and on that team was a Dr. Octopus type character named Gorgon. While Gorgon did utilize technological enhancements, I think his octopus likeness comes in the form of his prehensile hair. The hair tentacles he uses and his role as a scientist mixed with his weight and oddly familiar glasses all come together to really evoke a Dr. Octopus likeness, which is just weird enough to make me double take. He is also familiar enough that I can't really put him any higher on this list, so there's that. Number 9, Dex Star. Or Dexstar, or Dexter, or Dexstarer. Cats can be ruthless, cold, and scary at times, I'll admit that. But while the Red Lantern of Sector 2814, Dexstar, is an irrationally rage-filled kitty, it's all because he loved his owner. Dexstar's origin shows the cat Dexter with his owner when she is attacked by robbers who broke into her home. While Dexter tried his best to scratch the attacker, he ended up ending the life of Dexter's owner. When the police showed up on the scene, Dexter was kicked out into the streets so as to not contaminate the scene. Now, 2 rascals from the streets found Dexter when he was trying to sleep, put him in a sack, and threw him into a river. Now that is one hell of a sequence of events, and all this happening filled the poor little kitty with enough rage that it caught the attention of Atrocitus, who called out to him and made him a Red Lantern. With this newfound power of the Red Lantern ring, the Rage Kitty exacted his sweet revenge on the hoodlums and flew to say goodbye to his owner one last time, saying, in his little cat language, "I find who hurt you, I kill. I good kitty." I love this cat, but I also wouldn't dare mess with it. Ever. Number 8, Prometheus. Heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's strange. Take Prometheus. After seeing his criminal parents pass at the hands of police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice. A vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the whole Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his power against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness. He attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless. He trapped the Angel Zariel in limbo. He tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would explode if the Flash used his powers. And he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat. That's probably the most nuts thing on this list. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually sets up a base in the Ghost Zone, and from here, he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability. He is kind of crazy capable, and his vendetta on any kind of justice plus his Batman likeness just makes him kind of a little strange to me, but also terrifying. Number 7, Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, Overman, was the first, with the other superheroes being spawns of his DNA. Now that may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't really seem like a villain yet, does he? Well, after contracting a disease, contracting a disease from another person, yes, like that kind of disease, he goes insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday boom boom that he intends to use on Earth 17 and wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story, even having different iterations of Overmans who were different, like an Overman who became allied with the Axis powers in World War II. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world. I am sorry, sort of. Thanks for the content. Number 6, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Look, I talked about Batmite when discussing heroes, and he wasn't even really a hero. So how can I not mention the first 5th dimensional imp in this video? Plus he's got a fun name. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a reality warping imp obsessed with Superman, who, just like his rival Batmite did with Batman, simply seeks to annoy the hell out of Superman and just prove he is smarter than him. Which is good, because he has a level of power that in other hands could cause the entire end of the multiverse. More on that later though. He can do almost anything imaginable if he wishes it. And his only weakness really is being convinced or tricked into saying his name backwards to send him back to the 5th dimension, which if you're trying to say it correctly is honestly a superpower in and of itself. Clitopizixum. I got it. Number 5, Emperor Joker. Mr. Mxyzptlk has an extreme level of power, like I said. Also, like I said, if this power fell into the wrong hands, it could be potentially reality ending. Now, what hands could be worse than the psychotic hands of Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker? Well, that's exactly who gets the power in the Emperor Joker storyline. Mr. Mix gets bored and wants to give Joker 1% of his power, just to see the tricks Joker is able to pull off. But instead, the Joker tricks Mr. Mxyzptlk into giving him 99.9% of his power instead. Joker uses this power to rewrite all of reality to become his sick, twisted dream world. He eats the whole population of China out of a Chinese food container box. He keeps everyone stuck in a time loop, including Batman, who he introduces to the afterlife over and over every day forever. Oh, and he also turned Flash into a slow-moving Beast Man. Superman, the Spectre, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, being the only ones who can remember the former world, tried to do something about this all-powerful Joker. But that's just the problem. He is all-powerful. He destroys all of reality, but he can't bring himself to destroy Batman fully. And because of this, he loses control of his power, allowing the Spectre and Mr. Mix to steal it back and fix all of reality. This story it's pretty nuts. Number 4, Condiment King. When the villainous Condiment King came on the scene, it was literally on the scene, as he appeared in the animated Batman TV show from 1992. One of the best, honestly. Condiment King was Buddy Stantler, a comedian who was brainwashed by the Joker into becoming a villain who wields condiment squirters and viciously horrible puns. I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. Diabolical stuff like that. The puns get even worse in the comics, with his real name becoming a pun on its own. Mitchell Mayo. He isn't taken seriously by anyone. His weapons don't actually project his condiments at a speed fast enough to do anyone harm, but they sure are inconvenient, leaving nasty stains in your superhero costume. On the other hand, he does potentially have the ability to be able to cause anaphylactic shock if he is battling someone with an allergy, right? Number 3, Monsieur Mallah and the Brain. Monsieur Mallah is described in his wiki as a militant, super intelligent French gorilla. The Brain, on the other hand, is described as a genius French scientist and master criminal who exists as a disembodied brain. So, those two descriptions are interesting enough on their own, but when I tell you the French militant gorilla and the disembodied brain are an item together, I think that just elevates the whole thing to a different level. Together, they are the primary leaders of the Brotherhood of Evil, who were villains to both the Doom Patrol and the Teen Titans. They both appeared in Doom Patrol 86 in 1964. Now, Brain was once a scientist who experimented on the gorilla who would become Mallah, which would increase Mallah's intelligence. An accident injured Ernst, and Mallah had to remove Ernst's brain and place it in a technological holding thingamajig to keep him alive and be able to communicate. The two are almost always together, with Mallah carrying around the brain. Hey, look, I don't judge. You find love where you find love, but as a concept for supervillains who lead a team of supervillains, you gotta admit it's pretty odd to say the least. Number 2, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Let me repeat that for all those in the back who may not have heard. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, Man. I don't really have a problem with 2/3 of that. I just get really hung up on the vegetable part. Is that weird? Sven Larsson is the man who claims that title. And while it is a completely ridiculous one, it is actually pretty fitting. Sven fell victim to an experiment of his own making, which allows him to transform into any animal, vegetable, or mineral, either partially or fully, although he very obviously likes to do a bit of all three at the same time, which is an odd choice, but hey, I just work here. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man first appeared in Doom Patrol 89 in August 1964, and he is an enemy to the team, which makes sense given their weirdness. But Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man here has a vendetta against the Doom Patrol's leader, the Chief, who he believed once stole an invention of his. An invention that, funnily enough, is the only way of stopping Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. But he didn't even do that, so I don't know. Look, it gets weirder and weirder, but I gotta move on. Before I do though, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get out of my system one more time. Number 1. Mr. Mind. I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he is trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't even actually end up ending him. They just trapped him.